Thomas, what's happening?
Peter,
how are you?
oh man, I'm living the dream. You know how it goes.
Yeah, I'm a little sad, man. I was just looking at the intro there, and I remembered seeing a picture of me with hair. I remember when I had hair, fond days. Then I got the baloney yarmulke for a little while. Had the baloney yarmulke going on. Then decided most of my hair was quitting, so I'd fire the rest, and here I am.
Yeah. So welcome everybody to Ten-Four Tavern. It's Tuesday, February 3rd, the year of our Lord 2026, 7:06 p.m. right now. I'm going to put the chat in the screen so they can see that. I do the best I can at pulling up the chats and then acknowledge them, but I'm not the greatest at production. Couple of things. So Pete, tonight we're going to talk about some topical current events that are going on around ICE and the updates, Virginia PBA and the Abigail Spanberger crew governorship that she was elected, and then they endorsed her, but the membership is freaking out. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll bring on a wonderful, tremendous guest tonight, Lou Hayes Jr., a Chicago policeman. He's a sergeant in a task force in the Chicagoland area. They cover multiple counties, multiple cities, doing crazy stuff in a good way of overflow crime coming in and out of Chicago. He'll get into that. Lou Hayes he's a SWAT member, homicide detective, serial offenders, robberies, burglaries. He's chasing everything and anything in the Chicagoland area. He's very accomplished, and he's a tech guy all the way through and through. So I'll let him get into all of that as well. So really looking forward to tonight to talk to Lou Hayes, our first, by the way, active member, active law enforcement officer. Everyone else has been retired up until now, episode 32. So thanks for that. Really appreciate the viewers and the chat. But we're going to get into it tonight with an active member who's still doing intrusive. Eric, for you, we have someone tonight doing intrusive and proactive policing. But before we get into that, I want to acknowledge the Finest Unfiltered and the group. We got the Finest Unfiltered, Retired and Unfiltered, John McCary, Eric Dim, Marlon Bethel. 100,000 subscribers on YouTube this weekend. I was talking to Pete today, everybody. So as you're listening, we talked about maybe doing a thing called the 10-4-4. We'll do 4 things that we want to talk about. But I think the 4 things tonight should be, why did the 10-4 Unfiltered platform with the executive perspective and Ron Layson and Rob Lukash, and then with Pete and I in June being invited in our episode 32 in June coming on, why did they reach 100,000 members when a couple months ago they were only at 60,000? Why is this ramping up really fast? And I think for me, I jotted down some notes. I think because they're brave and they took a stance and they were told to take a jab and they didn't, and then they were put out. And then Eric was put out in the Summer of Love in 2020 and became the most complained cop. And they stood their grounds. And John started this podcast because he had a stance that he took. Pete, you know anything about taking a stance?
No, I never did that, Tommy, ever. I'd rather just kind of keep a low profile.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, look up Pete Forcelli, my brother from another mother. Taking a stance. Mike Marino has said it himself. I don't know that I would have been as brave as John did, and certainly you, Pete, as well. So I think one of the things is that they're brave and they took a stand. Now that they do have the podcast, they tell the truth. Mm-hmm. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to agree with their opinion, but they believe they're telling the truth as they know it. That means something.
They're authentic.
They're unfiltered. Right? They don't say, I'm not going to say that because I think it will be offensive. They've certainly pushed the envelope with that. And I do believe, because you and I, Pete, would not be here doing the thing that we're doing telling the stories by the people telling the stories that need to be told by the people who need to tell them. If we didn't think that John, Eric, Marlon, Rob, and Ron cared about law enforcement, active, retired, and future law enforcement. So I think those are the 10-4-4s: bravery, truth, unfiltered, and caring about law enforcement, previous, active, and future.
Yeah. Look, people want authenticity, and the people that are on this platform are authentic, and that's, I think, the most important thing that you can be. Otherwise, people see through you, especially in our profession, Tommy. We used to talk about it all the time. I could spot a poser, someone who did this shit in the street within 30 seconds of talking to them. Because for us, it's a survival mechanism.
Yeah. So let's get into that. So thanks, guys, for that. Thanks to the audience. Thanks to Eric, John, Marlon, Rob, Ron for being part of a family that, and the viewers and the comments, the chat. We love that. Our guest today, Lou Hayes, was like, "What's up with the chat?" I was like, "Oh, you're gonna love the chat. We're gonna love it. We're gonna get into it." Attack ideas all day long, every day. Let's keep the attacks of people to a limit. We don't attack people. We attack ideas. You don't like the idea? Feel free. It's a free speech platform. Knock yourself out. We don't need any ad hominem attacks. They're silly, they're stupid, and they're unproductive. So anyway, Pete, while I'm going to let you open for some of the ICE updates while I pull up the tavern menu and all that kind of good stuff. So I got a little production stuff to do. So go ahead. What's going on in ICE world?
Well, man, as we know, Tom Homan went up there and replaced the Border Patrol chief that was up there. And there was some discussions. Tom went up and negotiated. There were some conditions that originally allegedly were met or were going to be met. And one of them was obviously, the turning over of people who were in custody, which the state prisons already do up there, by the way. It's the local jail and the local police that don't. That was one of them. Another was that if ICE was under siege, if they were being attacked, that local police would come out and help them fend off the crowds. There were others, like, for example, if ICE had an issue where they were at a hotel or a restaurant, that the locals would respond and help them protect them, number one, de-escalate the entire situation. But now what we're hearing is that, once this was announced, the governor, the mayor, and others have now said, "Oh, no, we never said that." And that it's not going to happen. Ellison, the attorney general. So it's going to be interesting. Look, these aren't new laws, man. Like I've said before on this podcast, these have been around since the Immigration and Naturalization Service was part of the Department of Justice prior to the 2003 Homeland Security Bill. So I don't get it. These aren't new laws. Nowhere else in the country are these problems happening. There was a little uprising in Los Angeles, right? Paid protesters. I just don't understand what Minnesota and Minneapolis in particular thinks they're going to accomplish. You can't allow this to descend into chaos, because if it happens in one city, then it's going to start happening in other cities. So I'm speechless, frankly.
So I think you just said the operative word there, chaos. Chaos is unacceptable. It should never be allowed to happen, and it needs to be mitigated immediately. So for those who are allowing chaos to perpetuate itself, you are the evil one, even if you're not the active participant. So the four things, as I understand it, and tell me, Pete, if you understood this as well, to protect ICE agents, Trump's, what was perceived as the Trump administration, I'm not going to say it's Trump, the Trump administration's position was, when they went to walls, they had the phone call. Yeah, they might have had the phone call, whatever. Protect ICE agents. When they call 911, when they call up and say we're doing an operation, we need backup to keep things. You don't have to interfere. You don't have to get involved with our apprehension attempts, but you need to keep the peace. That needs to happen. That's one thing. When they're off duty, living in these cities, living in these hotels, going to restaurants, they're being accosted in these places. I don't even know how they know who they are, but that's a different story. They will be protected. These are United States citizens.
Correct.
They are not to be messed with. They have every right, just like everybody else, to call 911 or ask for police assistance and be protected. The third thing they said was, please just hand over violent felons, like you said, sort of being done statewide, locally. Can you do that? And then in return for those three things, we will withdraw what is perceived and be this over aggressive, and we will slow things down and we will back it up. So if you can do those three things, we'll do the fourth thing. Those are the four conditions. And it's my understanding through multiple media reports, multiple media sources, that is not happening.
No. And Tommy, look, here's the problem, right? Because I arrested hundreds of people at police stations, at court appearances, at Rikers Island, at Bronx House of Detention, when we were doing the trigger lock program. It was simple exchange of handcuffs. The CO took off his handcuffs, put on ours. We took the guy in his personal property. Hey, you want something to eat? Because we knew we had to process him, buy him a slice of pizza or something. It was painless. It was safe because they were already searched. They weren't going to have any contraband for the most part. We still checked them, obviously, because we've all heard the stories of what some people will put up there, or you know what. But it wasn't a dangerous situation. The danger comes when they let them walk out the back door, like that judge did, who was convicted, by the way, or another judge recently did it in New York City, if I'm not mistaken. And then the ICE has to go hunt them down. So, and then the other thing they forget, they talk about that all these sanctuary city laws protect the illegals. Well, if you're hunting down the guy that's the robber that they just let walk out the back door, and he's in the car with the landscaper, the cook, and the radiologist, who were all here illegally, right? But their only crime was coming into the country illegally. Guess what? Everybody's going. Just like in our days when I was looking for a guy wanted for murder, and if we went in and kicked down the door and one guy was inside, one for theft of service, another guy's a turnstile jumper, the other guy's a deadbeat dad that didn't pay his child support, guess what? Everybody's going. So these sanctuary city laws really do the opposite. They don't protect anybody except for the criminal. So it's really frustrating. And again, man, it's the law of the land. Like I've said before on the podcast, all right, the immigration laws, some people want to like them, whatever. ICE can't fix that. Only Congress can fix it. So what happens in places where people want to just maybe smoke crack or take meth? Do we start pushing back on DEA or ATF if you don't believe in the gun laws? Like, where do you draw the line? And the thing is, we should not relent at all, because when you give up something, right? Look, when you give up ground, it's much, much harder and often a lot more violent to take it back than if you just maintained it in the first place.
Yep. So you keep mentioning chaos, and that's exactly right. And I think the pretty and the good deaths are tragic, and they should not have happened, but they did. And, for us in law enforcement, we may understand why, and we'll wait for the full investigation to determine justification or not. However, my opinion, which is unfiltered, but what I believe to be true, I could be wrong, is I don't think these politicians really want to mitigate the chaos. I think their equity climbs with the chaos, because where Frey and Walls and Flanagan, the lieutenant governor, were nothing and looking as inept, they're just stoking the fires and want this chaos. But maybe I'm wrong. I just feel bad for the people who are the good, hardworking people in these communities that are suffering, man.
Yeah. Well, look, it doesn't hurt to have this chaos coming up on the midterms, right? Because then it looks like Trump's not running the country. This chaos has broken out, right? But let's look at some of the other things. Like you had the police chief there, and I don't want to besmirch him too much, but where he made a comment like, well, when they talked about the investigation, and his response was kind of like, well, it doesn't matter really what the investigation says anymore. People are upset, right? So what does that mean? I mean, look, I didn't like how things looked during that whole Floyd incident with Chauvin's knee on that guy's neck. But Tommy, you worked homicides. I worked homicides. When have you ever seen a homicide conviction where the medical examiner's cause of death does not show homicide?
Right.
So, I mean, would you want to be that ICE agent or involved in the Good shooting or in the Preddy shooting when you see what happened in that instance and you heard the mayor and the governor already say that these were murders? I mean, before the gunpowder even dissipated from the air, they were saying, oh, these were murders. It's a horrible situation. And people forget these ICE agents, they're just like cops or agents from all over the country, man. They just want to go there and do their job. They didn't choose this law. They're enforcing the laws that their organization was tasked with enforcing. Yet they're being demonized for going to work and doing their job every day. It's terrible.
Yeah, for sure. All right. We could spend a lot of time on this. Shifting a little bit, there was a Governor Newsom, California law, some level of enforcement asking local law enforcement to intervene with ICE agents who are masked. And LAPD came out with a statement and said, yeah, we're not doing that. You up on top of that? Did you see that craziness?
I did, but I want to push back on something Lily put. ICE does not have the training like locals do. Actually, they might not have crowd disorder control training, but ICE agents have more training on law enforcement in general than most police departments. So that's not true. That's a talking point from the left. Border Patrol, even more than that, which people say, oh, Border Patrol not trained. But no, look, here's the reality. Gavin Newsom, what blows my mind is, look, these governors, they have staff. And on those staff, there are lawyers. And lawyers are familiar with the Constitution. They're familiar with the Supremacy Clause. They can't stop ICE agents from wearing masks. They cannot interfere with federal agents in the performance of their duties. It's a violation of Title 18 of the United States Code, Section 111. And it doesn't mean you have to assault someone to be guilty, just to interfere with them, right? Intimidate them. And I'll tell you something else. It doesn't even have to be a gun-carrying, sworn member of a law enforcement organization. If you stop the postman from doing his job, you can be charged with that, and it's a felony. So, I mean, what this is all this virtue signaling. It's all meant to make ICE look like they're out there breaking the law when they're not breaking the law. Yeah. Law enforcement have uniforms. If you don't like the uniform, so be it. Look, do they normally wear masks or balaclavas? No. But when they get doxxed or threatened, or when people show up at their house because somebody figured out who the agent is and they're there to harass the agent and who's home but his wife and kid, what would you do? Who in their right mind wouldn't put on a mask? And they lie, well, they're not identified. If you look at their sleeves, they have like letters and markings. That's in case something happens that they can be identified by their organization as to who that person is. Many tactical teams wear similar things to that. Many tactical teams wear balaclavas and masks. So it's nonsense. It's all meant to just stir up unrest. And these politicians should know better. Like I said, Tommy, they have lawyers that write these bills for them. You think Gavin Newsom sat down with his legs crossed the way he crossed them, which I couldn't possibly do? Don't get me started on that. Of course, he didn't sit there and write it. His lawyers wrote it, and they know full well that it's bullshit. And you know what? God bless that chief for being willing to take a stand, because some wouldn't have. He knows the limits of the law, and he's not going to put himself in that position and say, yeah, sure, we're going to do it, knowing it would be a felony.
Yeah. So it's all kabuki theater. We know that. Previous administrations have deported significantly more people. No one said a word. We have a report that I read. I don't know how true it is. I'm going to disclaim its veracity and accuracy, but 63 people during the Obama administration died while in custody for inhumane treatment and rights, and how they were handled, and was it a death in custody, assault? I don't know the numbers broken down, but nobody said a word.
Or the kids in cages. Remember the kids in cages that was like broadcast on the news, and then it turned out, those actual photographs that you're saying were Trump era photographs were actually Obama era photographs.
Exactly. So I do want to talk about the masks a little bit, and then the facial recognition that is being used. And we'll talk about facial rec with Lou, because when he comes on, it'll be interesting from a policy perspective. But I know from going to the Hill personally, not what I heard, but what I know personally, going to the Hill and briefing congressmen, congresswomen, senators about the capabilities and how facial recognition is used. It seems to me that nobody has a problem with private use of identifying police officers with facial recognition. Like, there's no moratoriums on that. And then there is a website called 50A in the NYPD where all those people are on, and you can use facial recognition. You can take a picture from the web or wherever you get it from, whatever source of your probe photo is, and you can upload it into a publicly available website and see if you can get a facial recognition match on an NYPD member. That is wild and outrageous And they don't, all these privacy people don't say a word.
Nor did they complain when they used facial recognition for the January 6th issue, or when they used geofencing. And if your phone was anywhere near the Capitol, you were probably going to get put on some sort of a list to be spoken to. I know plenty of people that were flying into the DC area for things not even related to January 6th that were questioned as to why were you flying into DC. So it's funny how they can cast a very wide net when they want to. And look, Tommy, here's the thing. Assaulting cops is assaulting cops, whether that cop is standing in front of the U.S. Capitol or in front of a federal courthouse in Portland or in front of a police station in Minneapolis, right? Attacking a federal building is attacking a federal building. Right? So whether it's the cop or the building, it's the same issue. Deal with it. Treat everybody the same way for similar conduct, period.
Yeah. Okay, last topic before we get to Lou is in Virginia, the Virginia State Police Benevolence Association, the executive staff endorsed now Governor Abigail Spanberger, who was the congresswoman from, I think she was Virginia 7. And when she won Virginia 7, she came out and said, she got taped on a conference call where she said, don't ever speak about defund the police ever again. That's a losing issue. So I kind of sat there and go, okay, I'm not, Democrat, moderate, protecting the police, which is what I'm about. I don't care, Republican or Democrat, whatever. Not a bad person. Then she kind of performed in Congress, ran for governor. I personally voted for Sears. I liked her. She's a U.S. Marine. She's an immigrant, by the way, immigrant. She's an African-American. Well, I guess Jamaican-American, right? Not African-American. She's from Jamaica. Black-skinned, lieutenant governor, going to follow Youngkin's policies, did great. I like what Youngkin did from a public safety perspective. Sears lost. Spanberger wins. Turns out that the Virginia PBA endorsed her against the membership's wishes. And the membership is freaking out right now. Have you heard about that? You know what's going on with that?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, she pulled the bait and switch of the century. I watched some of her ads. I live in Virginia, as you know, Tommy.
Yep.
And among them, she talked about her time as a law enforcement officer, protecting children. Now, look, she was a U.S. Postal Inspector. Great job. They do amazing stuff when it comes to explosives going through the mail, contraband. Phenomenal agency to work for. I have nothing against them, but they're not really protecting children. So I think it was. And then she spent just a short time there before she went to the CIA. Now, the interesting thing there is in her ad, she talked about all of these things. And then the minute she gets into office, the things that she's talking about in her platform is lowering the sentencing schedule for robbery, right? Not cooperating with ICE. They don't cooperate fully here with ICE, but they do to some degree. Just a number of very anti-Second Amendment, a number of things that would be, get the NRA to drag her into court, I'm sure. So no, it was, I would say, the bait and switch of the century. But look, that's happened with other unions as well, where the membership doesn't exactly know where their money's going or who they're going to endorse. It's happened with other police unions around the country. But yeah, I know here in Virginia, people are quite pissed off. And I'm disappointed too. And look, they're talking about raising the taxes to the point where we have like a 13% income tax from under 6% now. So, I mean, it's like I think they're smoking crack. I don't know. They lost their freaking minds.
Yeah, a little bit off topic because it's all about the taxes, but you raise the taxes. I read the list of the taxes the new administration in our state, Pete and I both live in Virginia, everybody, our taxes, there's literally like 100 taxes being raised. And I ordered Grubhub last night. My wife wasn't home and I ordered me and the kid asked for Thai food. And so I said, sure. And I checked to see like where the taxes on Grubhub and what's the other one? The DoorDash, right? They're trying to put an additional tax on those deliveries. And there is a list of 100 different things that they're putting additional taxes on. And including, I'm expecting my utility and my energy to skyrocket through the roof. So anyway, a little off topic, but it's just funny. You get what you pay for, who you vote for, and then that's it. So this is not we can totally go down this path. But any final thoughts before we really get into the tavern, Pete?
No, let's bring Lou in, man. My blood pressure is really high at the moment from all this stuff.
Yeah, so we got. Wait, let me pull the menu down first. Welcome to the Ten-Four Tavern, Lou Hayes Jr., Chicagoland policeman, a Renaissance man. Welcome to the tavern.
Tommy and Pete, great to be here.
Good to have you, brother.
So, for anyone who's ever spent any time in the Chicagoland area, I have found Chicago coppers and dicks. For those of you who don't know what they are, they're policemen and detectives. They are some of the most caring and funniest people I've ever met. I've met cops in every city in this country. I'll take a Chicago area copper and dick any day. They love their sports. They like to pound. What are you drinking today? Wait, let's bring this up. Whoa, you're in the tavern. Pete, drinking tequila. I've got an espresso martini. Lou Hayes, Old Style. Tell them why you're drinking Old Style.
Hey, there's the term Grabowski in Chicago. It goes back to the Chicago Bears back in the 70s. And it's a concept of just a hardworking guy sitting in a tavern, drinking beer, no bullshit, no pretentiousness. And I thought it'd be the perfect drink to join in you guys here.
Yeah, perfect. It is. So thanks for doing that. I really appreciate it. So yeah, so Lou, I've truly come to love. We had so many. I've had, and I know Pete, you have too, come across Chicago coppers and dicks. I just have loved them. And then when I spent time in that town, specifically, they rolled out the red carpet for us, really took care of us. And I have a 9/11 story that if you guys want to hear it at the end, we went to Gibson's on Rush Street in June of 2002 after 9/11. And the way we were treated by not only Chicago coppers and detectives, but the entire restaurant was a moving experience I'll never, ever forget and very much appreciate it. And so therefore, I love that area. So I'm really excited to talk to you about not only you and your career tonight, Lou, but because this is a show about the people who are doing the job themselves, not the posers, not the people who, were peripherally involved, but the ones actually carrying the weight and then telling the stories that need to be told by the people who need to be telling them. So with that, why don't you tell us, where you grew up in the Chicago area, and what was your youthful path towards being a policeman?
Yeah, I grew up in the southwest suburbs in a place called Homer, now called Homer Glen. Basically, behind the houses across the street from me, there was cornfields in a neighborhood that was built up in the 1970s. My dad was the police. He had just transferred from Chicago's 2nd District downtown into the suburbs and raised myself and 2 younger brothers out there. It was a great life. It was playing in the streets. It was sports on that driveway right there. And of course, like every cop's kid, man, dad brings home old holsters and hats and clip-on ties and all that stuff. And I mean, it was me, cops and robbers all the way. So I was just, I was the only one of my 3 that became the police. But yeah, it was about that time that I realized that this is what I want to do. My dad would come home with stories about what was going on, and it's never turned back from it.
So, Pete, you have children that are on the job in law enforcement. I do too. Sometimes I feel a little disappointed. I romanticize the job so much that the kid had no other choice and he wanted nothing else to do in his life and become a cop. And then other times I'm like massively proud, which I am more so than anything else in the world. I'm massively proud that the kid's out there, humping a radio and doing investigations and he's in the real-time crime center right now as an intel analyst, not only in the military but also in NYP in Washington D.C. police. But Pete, like, did you share the same experience, just telling those stories, and then it just became like through osmosis?
I think my son, yeah. My daughter, the weird thing is she had no desire to go into law enforcement at all. She went and got a degree from an Ivy League school, University of Toronto, came back, and it was weird that when the Pulse nightclub shooting happened, I was in charge of the investigation into Omar Mateen, but our office in Fort Pierce was being fumigated. So we ran the command post out of my apartment. And, so that, as you know, it happened on the midnight shift. So she wakes up and there's all kinds of shit going on in the apartment. And she saw what was happening. And she's like, wow, I didn't realize you guys did that. I thought it was all about kicking indoors. I didn't realize that you folks would be out there putting those puzzle pieces together. And it was that made her do two things. One is she joined the Army and became a human intelligence collector. And two, she all of a sudden, instead of wanting to go into the publishing industry, decided she wanted to go into law enforcement. So, yeah, I mean, she saw it firsthand and didn't really, like Tommy, you know it is. People think they know what we do, but very few people really get to see it close up. And her, brief exposure, seeing it close up like that, really changed her perception. So that's what changed my daughter. My son always wanted to go into law enforcement.
So, Pete, I'm sorry, Lou, you have no choice. You suck it up. You become a cop. When did you get on the job? Where did you start?
Yeah, so
early days.
So I went to college just because that's what you're supposed to do. You go to college. I went to University of Illinois right here. And just the way that my brain's wired, I'm an engineer. So went in an engineering program there, but I just kept on coming back to being the police. So I switched my major over to finance. I said, this is something that's going to help me in my personal life until I turned 21. I started testing for the only police department that I tested for, which is Hinsdale. It's a small suburban, safe, low crime community in the west suburbs. I ended up getting a phone call in my apartment down in Champaign, and the chief calls me up and says, I got a spot for you in the police academy. I says, I'm dropping out of school, chief. I'll be there whenever you need it. And I did. I dropped out of the university. I came up and went into the police academy, went through Suburban Law Enforcement Academy out at College of DuPage, somewhat of a country club experience. It was a commuter academy. We weren't staying overnight there. Wasn't like as boot camp as I thought it would be. It was a little bit more academic. But I remember I graduate, I get out, and the very first call I go on, my first job is a domestic between husband and wife about the age of my parents. And I'm thinking, what the hell am I supposed to do here trying to walk these people through their marriage? And that was a rude awakening for me. That was call number one.
How old were you, Lou? Because I have a story with that as well that I believe about the age of becoming a cop. How old were you when this happened?
Yeah, I got offered this job at 20. I went into the police academy at 21. I was the baby in my police academy class.
Yeah. So let me throw this out to the both of you in the audience. I always thought I also went through the academy at 20, graduated. I was barely 21, and my first domestic, it wasn't my very first call, but it was involved, and I was a transit cop, so it was a husband and a wife fighting in the subway. It wasn't in the house, but I did have a supervisor talk to me about being so young and trying to talk through someone who's probably on the lower socioeconomic scale, really struggling through life, really knowing what the struggle is, trying to get ahead, trying to keep it together. And they're in their 40s and they're fighting and they're screaming. And you're this 21-year-old and you're going to tell them, you need to get your shit together. And they're like looking at you, and especially the man is like, don't you dare tell me what to do. And they're hurting and they're struggling. And I really took a step back with that and said, man, how do I really help mitigate, especially domestic violence? Because car stops and domestic violence are going to get cops killed more than probably anything else, right? Domestic violence, because they're emotional. Like, I'd go up against a guy with a gun and a robbery in a bank before a domestic violence situation every day. I don't know if you guys agree with that, but the
No,
way I see it.
when the one that's upset calls you, they're pissed off at their spouse and they want something done until it's time where things have to get done and you may have to go hands on. Then all of a sudden, wait a minute, I
So
love that guy or gal. Next thing you know, man,
Yeah.
it's a free
So-
fall.
Yeah, so Lou, I can appreciate that. But go ahead, your first call. Keep going. Walk us through your early days. You know?
Yeah, I was a very active patrol officer. I was making a lot of arrests. I was trying to work with intelligence coming out of the schools and the detective unit. I remember the detective sergeant hands me a packet from the Illinois State Police. It was called Operation Valkyrie. And it was basically a line of questioning and interrogation right there curbside on a traffic stop, getting into drugs and interdiction. And it gets into the lines of questioning and how the questions are phrased. And, you know, it's 20 or 30 pages stapled together, photocopied. I remember taking this thinking like, man, this stuff's not going to work. I took it, I threw it in my briefcase on the seat next to me. Literally the next car I stopped, it's like less than 10 minutes later, I use this line of questioning. And the guy reaches into the glove box and he hands me the drugs right through the window. And I'm like, this stuff works. Like, this is like the mental game, man. I was playing the physical game, the intimidation game, but no, this is like a psychological game. And that's when I really got into the lines of interrogation and some of the science behind that stuff. I made detective with 4 years on. The guys in my unit were there for 20 to 25 years. So it was like I was working basically with like my dad and uncles for, you know, these are old men and I'm like a young kid. And they used to laugh at me, calling me a wrecking ball, trying to go through and just plow through this stuff. And it was like, hey, kid, you got to slow down. So it starts.
So hold on. Lou, you talked about the comments. So you talked about Operation Valkyrie. So I don't know, but I'm a Swede. I have one of 15 medals from the Order of Amarante, the Queen Christina. I wear it daily. So does this make sense to you?
I have no idea what this is.
Oh,
No.
okay. I was hoping we'd get a connection, but whatever. Sometimes the chat we connect, sometimes we don't, but maybe they can explain in the chat. Continue. Go ahead. Interviews, interrogations, 4 years on a job, detective. Start working into, the really intrusive policing that.
Yeah, the thing when you work for a small police department like mine, you're talking a detective team that's less than 10, right? But then it's between analysts and evidence and detectives and all the support staff. So it's like right now it's myself and 3 detectives and some other specialty units. You have to work with others. And the nice thing that's going on in our suburbs and all over the metro area is this concept of task forces. So I got myself onto a SWAT task force. It was a 20 agency team, or it was about a dozen agency team that grew to 20 agencies at one point. It's now grown to about 40 agencies, and it's expanded way beyond just the tactical SWAT realm. So you've got investigative sections that are dealing with forensics, digital forensics, homicide team, officer involved shooting team. There's still a tactical unit that's got crisis negotiators. There's canines on there, drone teams, major crash, festival manpower teams. So it's all about sharing. So we've got these 40 agencies that have this rigid hierarchy that's completely separate from your police agency. So when an agency like mine ends up with a murder case, I'm able to surge 20, 30, 40, 50 detectives to work this thing for a couple of days with us. And, you know, there's a structure there for report writing and lead management and all that. But where we see that expanding is now into just the everyday burglary patterns and robbery patterns that are going on, that we see these prolific offenders moving around. So when I talk about Chicagoland, what I'm really talking about is like a really ill-defined region around a major metropolitan city that has, I don't know, you could say 250, 275 suburbs across 5, 6, 7 counties. And each of these suburbs is going to have probably in the realm of like 25 or 30 cops. Then there's a handful that have 50, 60, 75 cops, very few that are topping 100 cops. So we have to work together because of just how transient the criminals are.
Yeah.
When
So I think for our audience, we have a heavily centered New York City, NYPD area where, we have a 35 to 40,000 person sworn, which may be down less than 30,000 now. There's a lot of arguments in that, but very self-contained. They can do everything. They dip into the suburbs, Nassau, Suffolk, Westchester, Orange County, upstate New York, Yonkers. There's some cities, New Jersey, but it's pretty wild. I don't think outside, especially the Northeast, they don't appreciate the rest of the country. There are 18,000 law enforcement agencies in this country, of which 16,000 of them are 50 sworn members or less. It is something our forefathers were able to really see and have a vision for. It presents a lot of problems, which is what Lou is getting into tonight, but it also prevents a lot of, you don't want a federal police force. That's what you don't want. And so it is a unique environment to the United States of America that no other country has to the extent that we have. So Lou is walking us through the challenges. There's a lot of good things, but the challenges and the logistics and the interoperability and the coordination. And then so you can, whenever you feel it's ready, Lou, get into your team of teams, because that's what this is about.
Yeah, so I read Stanley McChrystal's book Team of Teams, and he talks about the cellular nature of terrorists back in the early years of the war. And he said that we were fighting. We had this big green machine that was very hierarchical. There's the general at the top and the soldier down at the bottom. And then there was all the different branches, and there was not a free flow of information. He says we need to break ourselves down in a more cellular nature just to combat the cellular nature of terrorism. And the book is easily the most profound of my career. I mean, it's been super impactful for me. Just the imagery involved in it, because it resonated with me with the policing environment and how small we were and fractured. It was like broken glass with the borders and all of our suburbs. So we've been experiencing violent crime, and it started spreading in probably 2016. There was a couple of street gangs coming out of the east side of Chicago that would come out to the wealthy neighborhoods like where I police, and they were just raping us with auto thefts overnight like we'd never seen. We'd have cities like mine that would experience 2 auto thefts in a year, right? 2 per year, right? That are now all of a sudden experiencing like 20 in a month. And I mean, that's just absolutely crushing us, because we're trying to figure out like where we're going with this. It's the same time that carjackings start going just off the hooks in Chicago. You're seeing like 1,900 carjackings a year in the city of Chicago and the suburbs there. I mean, if you count the suburbs, we're over 2,000 easily. So some of us get invited to play with the carjacking task force in Chicago. So here I am working in the safe burbs, getting invited to run on the Chicago expressways on special mission nights, where I got helicopters, airplanes, license plate readers, all sorts of technology and covert cars, basically chasing down like just occurred carjackings and trying to activate live tracking for manufacturers, all sorts of high-tech stuff. And I realized that if I was running some of the technology in the back seat, I could get 30 or 45 second head start on all the other cars, right? Like that alert, by the time it was going through the verification process, like and when we're moving at speed on the E-ways, like that's the difference in like 4 to 6 blocks where we're able to get in a position to get eyes on some of these carjackers and start relaying things to the air units. It was the most fun policing you could ever imagine. You take cops from the suburbs and you start putting all their tools and technology into the city, and I mean, just great things are bound to happen. So a lot of our bosses liked what they saw with that. They realized that we're working the cases from the suburbs in the city, right? We're solving our own cases because we're where we need to be. We have the right manpower and the resources focused on it. And we started replicating this in the suburbs. So now we're not running Chicago carjackings, we're handling our own crime back in our regions in the suburbs in these teams of teams. So we work very closely with the state and the county and the feds and the city and all the suburbs in being able to kind of surge all this stuff or crowdsource it when we need it. So we're working hard in the suburbs to basically turn this into like a big, huge team that's cohesive, but like you said, Tommy, like you still have to have some local control, right? I still report to my chief of police. Everybody else reports to their chief of police, but I really think it's kind of like leadership at a pure and raw level that like you just do what the other cops and supervisors are doing because it's a good idea. So you don't have to listen to them, right? You don't have to listen to the other sergeant, lieutenant, commander, but you do it because it's a good idea. And that's where this blend comes in of the team of teams, where you're able to operate in these small municipal departments, but together. And I realize that that's a foreign concept in a lot of the suburban areas across the country. Is that there seems to be rubs with big city or counties or staties or whoever it is. I just don't feel that. Like we're welcomed with open arms in any of the Chicago districts. Any of the state police guys come up and they're just good dudes that are there to help out. The ego stuff just doesn't last here, man. It does not last.
What about inside an individual organization? They have the problems that you're saying that don't work actually happen inside of big agencies as well, like sharing information, sharing command, sharing all that stuff. So, and again, I heard you present at National Real-Time Crime Center Association last fall. I thought it was the most honest and straightforward presentation. You did the team of teams there. That takes a lot of work to get everybody on the same page. And the only way that happens is if everyone puts the community first. Because if you put yourself first or you put your agency first, you're going to have different interests that drive you. So kudos to you guys. It really makes it's what policing is supposed to be about. Ron, thanks for the lower socioeconomic comment that I made earlier. Yeah, I'm just a little more refined and finessed now, but like all right, poor people who didn't have a lot of money, but that's like everybody, no matter who you are, deserves to live peaceably. And if everyone understands that, and we're here to get rid of the predators, we're here to get rid of the people committing chaos, again, whether it's organized or random, that's what it's all about. So let's start talking about pulling all of those things, because you mentioned a really important part about bringing the technology that the smaller suburban police officers, police departments can bring together. I want to just bring Joe Cortesis in. Joe Cortesis, Real-Time Crime Center, is the realest cop in the business. For sure. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Really appreciate that. And if you didn't catch Joe's episode on the executive perspective, Ron did an amazing job talking to Joe and his career and all the things. It was a great episode. I had to pop in and out, and I enjoyed it. I had to go back and rewatch it. So great episode. Thanks, Joe, for jumping in to the chat. But yeah, talk about how you guys had more tools than the big city police department, Chicago, struggling to pull together some technology, and how you did, like talk about how that worked.
Yeah, so the city's always had good technology early on with plate readers and cameras and helicopters, but we started bringing in some other stuff. So we started bringing in spike strips and Star Chase, which is the launchable darts, the pursuit mitigation stuff, drones. So we started bringing that stuff together, and what we realized is that no matter what anybody tells you out there, none of this stuff talks to one another, right? Like this is just a unicorn dream of like all of this fitting into like one pane of glass. So what we're doing is trying to figure out how my drone can be shared with some analyst in Chicago PD, or how can somebody's Star Chase unit from 6 towns over be shared downstream as the Pac-Man dots moving along the map? So we've got all sorts of technology of surveillance tech and tracking and secret monitoring stuff that we're deploying, that we need to be able to push it out, right? Like democratizing that information. So I think we just started doing what I think a lot of cops were doing, is we figured out who the meat eaters were in all these police agencies and start sharing it amongst them, so they could then be the one person in that agency that could like share it amongst their teams on the midnight watch or whatever. So it starts out with like Signal and Telegram groups, which just turns into a mess, right? You got like just message after message. I mean, literally it's like 1,000 messages a day, and it just doesn't make sense. We just wanted something a little bit neater. We stumbled onto Slack. It's what we're using now. It's a commercial product. We get one agency that pays for it. Kudos to the Cook County Sheriff's Office for flipping the bill on that. And we all get to ride the coattails and get to see just compliance and the data security that we need to make our bosses happy. And basically it's a 24-hour like decentralized platform where all this information and cases are being shared into, everything from live stuff to working case patterns and murder cases. So it's it's kind of our hack. Doesn't matter what platforms you're using out there. It doesn't matter what vendor you're using. It doesn't matter what RMS or CAD program or radio channel. We're able to just use that as a bridge. It's like the conduit that all this information flows between. And when you start seeing these big cases end up like 20 cities over getting grabbed up downstream because everybody along there was putting it in place, it's beautiful.
Yeah. So check this out. Like, this is the Ten-Four Tavern, right? And we're in a tavern and we're having cocktails and we're talking police shop, and you never know who's going to drop in.
What's up,
So,
Hey, brother Mike, how you doing?
everybody who's listening right now, just know that recently retired NYPD Lieutenant Michael Recupero, previous guest of the Ten-Four Tavern, said, I need to stop in and grab a beer, an old style with Lou Hayes, because Lou Hayes is, as Joe Cortesis also acknowledged, one of the realest policemen in the country. So Mike Recupero, welcome to the Ten-Four Tavern. Say hi to Lou Hayes, man.
Lou, what's up? What's up, Pete?
How's it going, brother?
Tommy, we talk all the time, so I say hi to you, of course.
Yeah.
But Lou, I told you I was gonna maybe have a surprise, but like 2 hours ago, I text Tommy and I'm like, I don't want to take this away from Lou. Like this is your time, man. And you're a great mind. I will say that you're a great mind out there, and I know you don't. You said you have less than 5 years left, but I know wherever you end up, 2? Was it 2? Wherever you end up, you're gonna be great, man. Just keep doing what you're doing, and Lou is very opinionated, right? And some people are like, "What is this guy saying?" But a lot of it makes sense when he does talk, and I respect someone that talks like that. By the way, when you guys were talking in the beginning, I was watching it, and I was getting heated too, Pete. I'm sorry. Pete's like, my blood pressure's going up. I'm like, mine's going up too. I can't. But great conversation, like always.
Thank you, brother.
The Ten-Four Tavern.
So one of the reasons why Lou is here, again, the finest unfiltered, the truth unfiltered, care about law enforcement, brave, take a stance. I don't think Lou Hayes would ever shy away from saying what he truly believes to be true, regardless of what position it may offend somebody. If he believes it to be true, I've gotten myself into a lot of trouble over the years, whether it be in a police department. I remember being in Brooklyn North, Detective Ops, the commanding officer of all of detectives in Brooklyn North, said to the group, all the squad commanders, the detective squad commanders in the group, blah, blah, blah. This is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to do. And I said something, and John Amadeo, who was the 7.5 squad commander when I was a 7.9, leaned over to me. He goes, you know what your problem is, Tommy Joyce? And I go, no, John, actually, I don't know what my problem is. He goes, your problem is you fucking care too much. You need to shut up. And I go, but this is bullshit. And you know it's bullshit. And he goes, yeah, but I'm not going to fucking raise a stink. I'm just not going to do it. And he's like, your problem is you care too much and shut the fuck up. And I had that conversation with my wife. And it's like, we're doing things. And it's like, we're not putting up with bullshit. So I think, Lou, you're being recognized here tonight by Pete, Mike, and myself as calling it like it is. This is what this podcast is, the true, finest unfiltered. You say what you believe to be true as long as you believe it to be true. If you're intentionally lying, then we don't like that shit. But we're all here. We're all cops. We've seen it with our own eyes. We put our hands on it. It is what it is. So, Mike, final words, and then we'll let you dip out and go hang out with the people who you showed up in the tavern to hang out with, because it ain't us. So,
Marlon, how you doing, by the way? I think Lou has developed a pretty good strategy, and cops do have a brain, right? We're not dumb cops, right? Not everyone thinks we are, and what Lou's doing is very calculated, and it's working for him. And I think a lot of people should take notice of what he's doing. So the rest of the podcast, I'm sure it's going to be great. I'll be listening to it. Tommy, Pete, Lou, anytime you need me, you let me know. I'll be here.
Yes.
Thank you, Mike.
all right, brother. All right, Mike. So sorry for that little pop in, but
No, great.
yeah. No, it's okay. Well, it's a sign of respect, Lou, is exactly what it is. He knows who you are. He knows the work you're doing. He's out and about. You're out and about. And I had a conversation with him. He was on a previous episode. We did our thing, and he's like, I said, well, would you consider a pop in? And he goes, I would love to. And then tonight, last minute, he said, you know what? I'm not going to do it. It's his time. And I go, why not? It's a fucking tavern. We're hanging out. We're a bunch of boys drinking old styles, right? More than one, right?
No. I don't know what that noise was.
I usually say martinis are like breasts. One's not enough and three's too many. But old style, all you can handle, buddy. All you can handle. Now, we do not encourage over drinking. But seriously, his appearance tonight is a show of respect for the amount of work that you're doing and how you're setting a tone across the country and influencing people to think a certain way about what this technology is, because you're on the forefront of it. So with that, there will be a segment where I want to go through your pictures and revisit your careers. But I think where we are now is, you've been talking about the interoperability and the coordination and collaboration with everybody, getting things together. Kind of start segueing into the technology, bring that up, and then towards the end, we'll just go through some really cool pictures of your career that have great memories for you. We're an hour in, we're at 58 minutes right now, so we've got some time. So let's get back into the tech and where you're doing. How do you use tech to put handcuffs on bad guys?
So I keep on talking about the tech meaning nothing without the willingness to do kinetic policing. All right. So I want to balance this conversation with technology, that we have to have the willingness from cops, their bosses, their chiefs, and their politicians to get out there and do dirty police work. And when I say dirty police work, I don't mean unethical. I don't mean illegal. I just mean that it's sometimes ugly, right? Good policing is not always pretty. You got to trade paint with cars every now and then. You're going to have to tackle folks. You're going to have to run after them. And that's just the nature of policing, is that it could be ugly at times. Our role with technology, it's strategic in that you need to put as much intelligence and data behind this to make sure that you're going after the right people, right? That we're not fishing by net just trying to grab up what happened, right? Like this is based on intelligence and case history and case files, lots of information sharing, and it's very targeted against repeat serial offenders. So when we're grabbing folks up, this is usually like not their first rodeo. We're talking sometimes, 20, 30, 40, 150 crimes into these patterns. Tommy, we talked about a case. You said you got to talk to Pete about this. And we had a burglary pattern. It's 132 burglaries that we attributed to the same crew. Had a detective that was taking the lead from my agency, right? We had 2 of those 132 burglaries. But he took it upon himself to write tons of search warrants for a lot of electronic data that was out there and layer this all up, and watching videos and cameras and all the other surveillance technology that we have to identify 18 offenders in this. And we bring it to one of the prosecutor's offices, and they're like, yeah, this is too much. Can you print it out for me? Print it out. I'm like, this is a video. Yeah, but I like it on paper. I'm like, no, you have to watch it. It's an animation. It's like, it's time and place. Like we're going to play a video for you. And it's like, yeah, I like to write on the paper. Can you just take some screenshots? I'm like, yeah, it doesn't really paint the picture like I want it to. So I realized that we had this technology that was just, being used in ways that prosecutors' offices weren't used to seeing them. And I got to be fair, we use 4 different prosecutors' offices. Predominantly the 2 of the different counties, state attorney general's office, and then the Fed prosecutors. So I'm not telling you which one this is, but they hey, give us your 20 best cases. Like, all right, well, we found 26. We can't pare it down to 20. We got 7 offenders. And it never gets prosecuted. We're talking hundreds and hundreds of man hours that go into the data analysis here. And it's just really a kick in the backside on my detectives that were putting this thing together. So we're not looking at one burglary here, right? We're looking at, this is all patterns. And the only way that you develop these patterns across these agencies is by sharing the information. And you got to have the bulletins. So if I go back to 2002, when I first made detective, we would have monthly detective meetings, 1 in each county. So I'd get 2 of them a month, and I'd make 40 copies of a flyer with the guy's picture on it, maybe. And you put them all on the back table. And at the end of the meeting, after you talked about your cases, the detectives came out of the meeting and picked up one of the flyers, and then went back to their agency and sat around with their guys talking about everybody's cases that were at the meeting. This isn't what we're doing now. We're literally getting videos from crime scenes shared regionally within minutes. Within minutes, with literally thousands of responders that are on duty. So it's so what that technology is really really wide. Everything from stuff with cell phones and towers and what's contained in the phones, to different tracking devices we're running with, to different cameras, license plate readers. All that stuff has got to be able to talk to another. And it's not just good to master one of those bits of technology. You have to know how that piece of technology should lead you to another bit of technology. And it's in a nonlinear way, right? You could be bouncing around based on the bit of information you start with is going to determine different pathways and what you learn there. So it's really like an adaptive mindset where you don't know how you're going to solve the problem. So I've been really resisting all sense of policy and checklists up front. It's just not the right environment for that. It's I came in with a policy manual that was 6 inches thick. This stuff doesn't have policy. This has some guidance, but the technology, no matter how technical it is, it's nonlinear, if that makes sense. Right? You don't know what the next program is that you're going to query. You don't know what the program after that is. So it's been super hard to train. Right. I was a field training officer at one point where I trained patrol cops. When I was on the SWAT team, I was a trainer. I trained SWAT cops. As a detective and a detective supervisor, I've trained detectives. By far, the hardest thing that I've done is training people in the real-time crime center space. It is by far the most difficult because of how much there is.
Mhm.
It's both very technical and very adaptive at the same time.
Yeah. So, all right. So a couple of things here. I want to do the comments because this is important. So we have someone from France. So I'm guessing, so everyone, so they know Lou has taken upon himself to learn to speak the language and speak French. So Jean-Marc Bordeaux, hello from France. Lucky we have it. Is this one of your
Bonjour,
friends?
Jean-Marc.
You want to say anything in French?
Tu voudrais un autre verre de vin, monsieur?
So good. And that's what I said because we're going to talk culinary too, because Lou and I have shared some text messages recently about some of the things we've been cooking. And it's for anyone who knows when I publish the promo videos, sometimes I'm cooking with Moxie and Maisie. Yes, Ron, Moxie and Maisie, they're not in here, but I can bring them in, my girls. And so, hello, Lou, say something so I can judge your accent. Yeah, so.
Oh, no, I hear you French people are brutal with this stuff.
Well, so my wife went to the French Culinary Institute, so that's the extent of our French. But that is the introduction into culinary arts, so we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. So let's get back on the tech and real-time crime centers. You were talking about how difficult it was. Why is it so difficult? Because of all the different technologies and how rapid and what's the velocity of the technology in the last 2 years versus before that? Because what I'm seeing is wild right now with artificial intelligence. And I know you have a position on artificial intelligence. We may or may not disagree. I'd love to hear it, but I know you have a stance on it. So feel free to just let it rip now. So go.
So a lot of this data stuff, right? If you're looking at GIS points, you're talking about dots on maps that occurred there at certain times. Crimes, captures, somebody was cited, cited with their eyes, right? They were seen somewhere. And all of those are like blips on a map. And what we're trying to do is make sense of those blips on a map. We've got so what we're using is algorithms, right? These are formulas that we're using to start matching up these patterns to figure out days of the week and times of the day and all sorts of like calendar heat maps. And those are things that, they're mathematical, right? They're calculations, right? So I don't need a computer to do that. I know what the calculations are already. And I guess my frustration with AI is we think that this is going to solve it, where I think our problem is data governance, data access, and data sharing. So across 250 police agencies in the region, all of whom share crime patterns and criminals, like we're not getting all the right crime data and the offender data and the suspects and the license plates and the cars that are being used. We're just not getting that in any format that it could even go into these programs. Right. So, I bust on Recupero all the time. I'm like, oh man, you had it easy. One agency?
Yeah, that's what we talked about. Yeah.
And, some of the other guys from Real-Time Crime Center are like, dude, you're crazy. You're trying to build a crime center for 40 agencies? I'm like, 40? Where'd you hear that? He's like, yeah, I know it's crazy, right? I go, no, 250.
Right.
No, they're like, this is not going to work. I says, no, it's not going to work under the paradigm that is being pushed right now, which is physical facilities. And it's not about physical facilities. It's about networking, and it's about being able to share this stuff. So I try to work with vendors and explain to them that what we need policy issues with the chiefs beforehand, before we get into some integrator program. Facebook is only fun if you have friends. But what we're at now is everybody's on like, hey, I'm on Facebook, you're on Twitter, and somebody's on Instagram, and like we're not talking or liking or commenting on or seeing anybody's stuff. We have to agree on some of these platforms. So trying to bring a lot of these together. And it's probably one of the biggest challenges that we have. So throwing AI at this is the data's dirty, it's messy, it's wholly incomplete. So let's focus on that and use just the easy mathematical algorithms first before we start getting with fancy AI stuff, trying to, uncover patterns. We know a lot of what we're supposed to be doing already. It's just kind of a buzzword, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know. Go ahead, Pete. Were you gonna say something?
No, I agree. It's a lot to get your head around.
So yeah, I think when you talk with Mike about the NYPD and one agency, like it's a lot easier than the challenge you have, but it's still not complete because the complexities of the NYPD and all of the integrations and all the technologies that are coming in. How many? 200 and what? How many agencies are you dealing with?
Yeah, I mean, I always go on the low end of 250.
Okay, 250. It's just an insurmountable. And again, the challenges that we talked about, the forefathers who created this country, established our independence, and then set this forth, never anticipated but this is the challenges we're at. It's always been I've been in the tech space on this side of it for almost 20 years now. It is the challenge, but like I am seeing, correct me if I'm wrong, some vendors are taking the place, your data, here's how we do it, here's how we share it, we'll agree to do it. And some are saying no, and we're not going to call out any specific vendors who are doing it. They have business interests. They have their shareholders to respond to, their investors to respond to. They can choose not to. But I did hear a public safety leader who I think is one of the foremost who said, if you have a vendor who will not figure out a way to communicate across platforms, they will not be invited back into our agency.
Yeah, I think from purely business sense is we're starting to see the industry of police and public safety technology turn into an oligopoly, where you've got several big players that are starting to form these strategic joint ventures or mergers or acquisitions. So now everybody's got the same suite of technology. Everybody's got an RMS, an LPR, a body cam, a platform, this, that, and the other thing, right? And now you're kind of getting locked into this. So it's frustrating because some of us have bought into different vendors that we now all of a sudden realize that they're getting eaten up by one of the oligopolies, and like now they don't want to talk to one another. So we're on the losing end of this. And to be able to make those things talk is it takes a tremendous amount of money. And luckily some of our teams have some really tech savvy guys in it that are learning some of these cheat codes and are able to build this and talk to the engineers in ways. It's not uncommon for some of these bigger firms to fly in some of their folks into our environment. So they're sitting along with the crime desks or they're riding with coppers in the field. And one of the things that one of the big companies says, we've never seen our technology used this way before. What do you mean? He says, well, I didn't know you could do this. I said, don't take this the wrong way. I said, but we had to figure it out by ourselves because your training program sucks.
It's so good.
So we didn't know it couldn't do that, right? We weren't limited by the training. We just started experimenting and figured out how else it could be used. So that was again like this adaptive way of thinking, where now it's become somewhat standard. Like, well, this should be a feature. I'm like, well, it is a feature. You don't need to, you don't need to make anything. We're already doing it.
Yeah.
So we're seeing everything. You want to acquire tech by a single agency. That's pretty simple. All you need is money. Right? You need some support and you need some money. But you start adding that second or third police agency and care about what they care about, like your neighboring agency, and find out what vendor they're using so your stuff talks, and it communicates. That's hard. And some police agencies just don't want to go through the collaboration efforts. They don't want to go through those conversations because it takes a very long time once you establish these committees. So instead, you get some agencies that say, we want the technology, we're buying it, and we're buying vendor A. So now they have it, and then, well, if everybody else doesn't go with vendor A, we're running into interoperability issues right away. So, it's that saying, you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go together. But meanwhile, your community's bleeding with crime, and, there's pressure to do something, and there's technology that could address it. So, let's buy it or rent it or lease it or whatever the business model is. It's it's like, the NYPD might have issues of scale, right? To scale it up to those numbers. But I always say that we have the issue of scope, and that we need to bring in the different variety. All these police agencies are going to have different strategies on how they want to spend their money. Are you an agency that wants to rent or lease equipment, or are you an agency that wants to build and buy infrastructure? Those are two different business customers, and you're going to kind of gravitate towards different vendors based on how you want to work your budget and spend money. So not only that administrative side, but then, are you willing to catch bad guys? Are you willing to deploy spikes and stop sticks? Are you willing to use the GPS launch darts like Star Chase? So there's a lot of stuff that we need to kind of bring together. I saw one of the questions in the chat came up earlier. It says, in that style of, loose command and control, who ultimately makes the decision? It's like,
Right.
Well, that's a great issue. I mean, that's why some police chiefs, don't want to get their people involved in these, because it's a very fluid command and leadership that we're running with. If something happens in my agency, when I'm working, I may be the one that's taking the point, but as it starts moving into another agency, I might pass that command over to another supervisor. So that's out of respect.
Yeah.
Right. And if we argue about it, we get together and say, hey man, who's in the best position to call the shots on this? Who's got more skin in the game? Who's got the right jurisdiction? Who's got the resources? Who's going to be able to run with this down the road? All those things factor in, and then we just figure out if who we're going to listen to.
Right. So I'm getting a couple of questions from the chat, and then the cronyism and who decides. But then I received a text. Different procurement approaches. Who gets to fix? How do you fix that? How do you get? I think it's these consortiums that you pull together and they align. And what does that look like, Lou? Because it sounds like you guys are doing better than most in the country. I've heard of consortiums that are massively dysfunctional. I've heard of statewide deployments. of certain technologies, not all. I've heard of 28 city agencies in a county with a single prosecutor. I like a prosecutor, like pulling everybody together. Tell me how you feel about this. And this is literally off the cuff right now. I like it because at the end of the day, if the prosecutor who in a single jurisdiction says, this is the way I feel I can be most successful in successfully prosecuting really bad guys, like 132 burglary patterns of 7 suspects, and not give me 26 or 27 capers, but give me all 132, because I can pull it all together, and maybe it's outside the county, so maybe it can't. But does a prosecutor court, who should be the tip of the spear in these kinds of environments?
So let's go back to DuPage County, Illinois. This is the county next to Cook County where Chicago is. So my municipality straddles the county line. So I'm part in Cook and part in DuPage. A lot of our infrastructure is with DuPage. And we have an emergency telephone board. So all this 911 surcharge that goes onto your cell phone every month funds a CAD system. It funds police radios, fire radios, and a decent amount of infrastructure there. And what we've got is we've got countywide RMS, countywide CAD, and those are like benchmark tools, right? Those are like foundational stuff. So we don't get to have a whole lot of say in it, but there's committees. So we know that we can go to this ETSB for issues with our radio or repurposing radio channels, or what are certain radio zones going to be used for. So it's been a good body, right? And there's process, right? There's due process that goes along with changing the policies for that stuff. There's money that they have to use at their discretion to buy some of this equipment for us and to cause those integrations to work. And then, like I was talking about at the countywide task force level, so like my murder team or officer involved shooting team, right? Like that already has a hierarchy at play. And now there's another team that just got developed a couple of months ago. We're trying to get drone as first responders up and running in a regional level. We want to basically put a bunch of these docked drones on lily pad type coverage over areas and put them up in strategic locations. And these are going to cover, even in our beta phase, it's going to be covering about 11 different police jurisdictions in whole or in part. So we've got these committees that are building up, and the committees are a lot slower, but at least there's a head of these committees, right? There's these, as you call, the tip of that spear that's pushing it forward. So back years ago, it must be 10 years ago, state of Illinois started some legislature that said that your 911 centers had to cover so many residents. You couldn't have these small mom and pop shops covering, one or two small cities, that you had to develop these consortiums or these consolidated centers. So that caused a lot of this already. So I'd like to see more of that on a bigger scale with some of the technology. Like if a dispatch center, a 911 call center is covering 20 different police agencies, right? Like maybe those are the police agencies that start sharing vendors and information earlier. They're just the natural hubs of information. We've been picking up each other's 911 calls for 10 years. Now it's time to maybe start broadening this into the drones, into plate reader systems and other integrator programs.
Okay, so Ron Layson, one of the hosts from the Executive Perspective, said we need a CAS. That is a reference to CAS Touch in the NYPD, the drone czar, if you will. So we'll leave it at that. But just to bring some light stuff. So why don't we do this? We're an hour and a half in. I definitely want to finish up some of your great photos that you shared on your career. Why don't you give us some final thoughts on technology and where you are now, reality, where you would like to see it go, where do you think it's going to go? Because what you want it to be and what is reality could be two different things. And then because I know you have a lot of really strong thoughts on that. And then we'll do your career. We'll wrap it up. We'll talk about LinkedIn because Pete, myself, and yourself are very, very vocal on LinkedIn. So I want to do a lighter side on all the comic relief of LinkedIn because it's so good. So we'll wrap up with that at the end. But give us a tech final thoughts, and then we'll do your career, and then we'll do some LinkedIn stuff.
Where I fear we're going is we're turning into the video game police, right? I fear what's happening is we're developing young coppers and analysts, and we're going to fight crime from behind the screens because you need to staff these desks. You need to staff these computers. And it's like they're playing video games, right? And I was helping out today. I'm sitting at my desk. I'm approving reports of my detectives, and some other high priority job comes out in a neighboring jurisdiction. And I immediately jump over to it and I start helping out, trying to check cameras and trying to identify offenders and something. And I felt like I was playing a video game. I'm super far removed from this. But if everybody's just playing that game, all it is information, right? Somebody's got to go out. And I talked about this before. You've got to have that willingness to conduct kinetic policing, to stay out there. And I worked with the good guy Kenny on one of my teams, and he says, "Man, I don't understand all the technology like you do, but I know that you put me in the right place to find the bad guys." And that was like coming together, right? It's like I was working something on a computer back at the command post, and he was out there knocking on doors, making it happen. So we've got to remember that it's never going to replace that stuff. I don't care how many drones you've got in the air. I don't care how many cameras you've got around. You've got to be willing to do something about the information. Otherwise, you're just a spectator playing this game like a video game. So that's got to be the focus for wherever technology goes.
I have a big comment on that. I'm going to go to you, Pete.
It's not a new phenomenon. I remember when I was in Phoenix, still as a group supervisor, walking in one day and one of my agents is sitting there and she's got her coffee and I hear her bullshitting on the phone and she's got her screen maximized and there's a pole camera up there. Right. So then I'm like, well, who's out there on the surveillance? She goes, no, I got it, boss. Nobody's out there. I'm like, well, what do you mean nobody's out there? She said, well, I got the surveillance here. Right. And granted, this isn't the technology you guys are talking about, but it's a similar story. So then she minimizes it and pulls up the tracker that she had on the car. She's like, look, I can see when the people leave. I'm like, are you fucking stupid? I'm like, yeah, you can see if they go to Home Depot in their car, but are they buying a red brick or a brick of cocaine? I said, you got to be fucking kidding me. But yeah, technology, I always argue, it's the supplement, as you call it, kinetic policing, Louis. I call it old school shoe leather wearing policing. But yeah, in a lot of places, we're allowing it to replace some of the old stuff. And look, I think part of that is leadership cowardice. A lot of managers would rather have their people sitting behind a screen than out there putting hands on folks. But look, you don't stop crime behind a computer screen or sitting in a cubicle.
Nobody is going to get in trouble if they don't put hands on somebody.
Yeah.
All right. So I read a book. I have a couple of old historical police books. One, a previous guest, Pete Mangan, I lent it to him. It was written by Captain Cornelius Wilentz, and he was a turn-of-the-century police captain of the turn-of-the-century 20th century. And I have an autographed book that I found in my wife, who's the best, found in an old bookstore, and she thought, oh my God, NYPD, Captain Wilentz. Anyway, Pete Mangan is in possession of that book right now, and he will return it, or he will face a kneecapping. But he talks about police work and the early century police work. Then there's another book that I read called Headquarters by Francis X. McCormick, who was the chief of detectives in probably the 30s, 40s. He was probably his career's 30s, 40s, and 1950s of the NYPD. And there's a statement in there that said, no matter how much technology you have, no matter all the advancements of technology, nothing will replace the stool pigeon in the back corner of a hotel room that will tell you everything you need to know and where to go and who to talk to and what car to follow. And I don't think that's changed. We're just using technology to advance that. But at the end of the day, that information, what used to be flowing from a human brain and their mouth and the information that they knew, we're now collecting this data and harvesting this data. And you still have to act on the information and data. And then how much, Lou, to your point, is how much confidence you have, the dirty data that's out there. And is it right? Is it wrong? Is it correctly spelled? Did we link it appropriately? Is the identity resolution appropriate? Is the incident linked? Biometrics are linking things, all of that stuff together. But to your point, Lou, is when you're talking to that detective and you say, you're great with the technology, tell me with what level of confidence, is it the right door, the right car to stop, the right person to interview, and what do I say to them? Because it's not just who, what, where, but like, what's the information that I have that's going to cultivate and dictate the conversation I have with them? Because it's more than just, no, I need to talk to Lou. It's like, what do I say to Lou? And how do I say it? And how has Lou's behavior in the past dictated how they may respond to my line of questioning today? Did they talk when they were previously arrested? Did they confess? Did they waive their rights? Did they? So really filtering all of that stuff to a really smart and engaged and intrusive, proactive, precision, whether it be patrol or investigative process is what, and I think Lou, you're at the top of that. So kudos to you. I think we've heard that. Any response to that? And then we'll do a little bit more of your photos and your career, because we want to acknowledge you and all the great work that you've done. So any final thoughts on the tech stuff before we lighten it up a little bit?
Yeah, I'll leave you with a story. A couple of weeks ago, I was working on a team. We're scoping some burglars out overnight, and like, we don't know everything, right? Like, there could have been so much more intelligence and investigative work done. At some point, you got to stop it with the information, and you just got to go out there and do it. And I found myself in a position. I'm in an undercover car. I park it. I get out. I'm hiding in the bushes next to a Chinese restaurant. I'm looking across the street. I watch these guys break into a business, running out. The alarm's going off on the inside. The rest of my guys are out there. They're spiking tires, grabbing people up. I'm thinking, this is great. We have no idea who these folks are. We have no idea yet, right? We just didn't sit around and wait for the information to be perfect. We got out there based on enough info, and we knew that we could act on it. And that was so incredibly fun. And I think that there's so many cops out there that if we cultivated that in them, that they would continue to have fun doing this job and doing meaningful work.
Yeah.
Quantum, Fine Arts, and Fossils 2152. Thank you for preventing and stopping that. Appreciate that. So thanks for the comments. All right, so Luke, let's do this. 8:40 Eastern, so we're an hour and 40, give or take, into it. Let's go through a bunch of pictures, talk about some funny pictures, and then we'll talk about LinkedIn and how it. I'd like to not only do the social side of LinkedIn, but I have a business perspective. I never was on LinkedIn when I was an active police officer. But I'd like to hear your perspective. Pete's very, very vocal on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear all three of your versions of it. But let's do some let's do some Lou Hayes, because there's some good pictures in here, man. So I bunched them all up because there's too many slides. So Lou, go. Like, what's the picture on the left?
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to Providence Catholic. I was Charlie Celtic. I played a lot of sports in high school and dabbled around, but nothing was as fun as being the mascot. It was the way to go.
And then
I
rugby.
see myself as a mascot now.
Yeah.
Played rugby at the University of Illinois. That's me, number 5 there, about to get my ass kicked. But again, I gravitated towards these team sports.
Yeah, so let's just so you know, I could not put all of these in chronological order. So we're gonna bounce around Lou's career, but I think football players are one thing. I think a bunch of other sports are another thing. I think rugby players or anyone willing to play rugby is a whole nother level. So Lou Hayes, if you're nothing else than a superlative policeman, you played rugby, because that is a whole nother level. So and what's this young picture of you as a young policeman?
No, I just want to show that I was skinny and good looking one time. So that's that shot.
Oh, you may not be skinny, but I like a little dad bod stuff. You look good to me, buddy. So, you know. I'm guessing that's an entry photo, not a booking
Yeah, that's
photo.
when I got fingerprinted for the job, and that's my police academy graduation with my dad and my mom. The got to work a couple jobs with my dad. One of them was a armed robbery arrest, so that was fun. We were in two towns that were next to each other, so it's the one time we got to lock somebody up together. And down in the bottom, I'm in a burger cooking competition. So this was the thin blue line: blue cheese, grilled onions, some bacon, and arugula on a patty with some thyme and coriander. So it's a award-winning burger there.
So for the culinary arts folks, I hope you got an ingredient list. We'll circle back to that in a minute. And again, I'm sorry for jumping early, late career, but again, putting the pictures together. But I will say your mom and your dad and handling a job with your dad, stellar. Can't. My academy, my dad wasn't here. My mom was there. My mom was not here for my retirement, so that means so it means a lot. And I'm glad. Thanks for sharing that photo. Go ahead.
Yeah, I came on and I was working with guys that were considerably older and more tenured than me, and these guys were some of my first teammates that were showing me the ropes. Everybody had at least 10 years on the job, and you learn quickly when you're working with experience. Those guys got super frustrated with me at times, but they dragged me along and tried to accelerate that learning process. Some picture and detectives pulled some cool looking bongs out of some house on accident, and you can see the Nextel.
I love that. I love that.
You went,
Polaroid.
I missed the Nextel, man. Those are my favorite.
Yeah.
So one of the graphics that the Ten-Four Tavern used early was a Polaroid photo on a case, but like we're trying to follow the algorithms and the things that make you go viral, blah, 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 whatever. I love that this is exactly why we use the Polaroid imagery earlier, is because you have a Polaroid photo from 9/13/2002 and the case number on the bottom. It's exactly why we were using it. We've abandoned it because it doesn't work. So it's all about clicks, algorithms, share, like, subscribe. So by the way, everybody, like, share, subscribe to the Ten-Four Tavern and the Finest Unfiltered website and the Finest Unfiltered YouTube channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. So, all right, we're going to go to the next one.
Yeah, still a bunch of the same guys. For years, I was the youngest guy. For years, because even guys that came on the job after me were older. So I just had a bunch of guys that were, big brother figures to me, and I just really appreciate how these guys handled me and the patience that they had.
I think Pete and I will agree. It's all about leadership, mentorship. You don't have to have rank to be a leader, and all the people that Pete talks about extensively. Going into the squads that he did, and they had more time on the job than he had on the planet, and then he thought he was out of place, but they took him under his wing. And so,
Lou, when I started when I first showed up in the 45th Precinct Detective Squad, I had two guys that worked there that were around in the days of Frank Serpico. Over 35 years in the NYPD back then. So yeah,
so good. So good.
Yeah, that picture.
Good. Sorry.
No, that picture back there was at a Super Sectionals Chicago high school basketball game, and those things used to get rowdy, so they hired a bunch of us to work those. This is we're working a protective detail for the president of Pakistan, Pervez Musharraf, and we didn't do anything. Basically, we sat in a van like all day long, telling "Would you rather" for like 6 hours, and you don't want to play "Would you rather" with these guys, man. They come up with some sick stuff, but
Yeah,
I spent 16 years on a
that's the whole cop humor thing. So, and there's a lot of gallows humor, and it's like people wouldn't understand, but you gotta beat the boredom, you gotta beat the horrors, you gotta find ways to get out of those things, man. I get it.
Yeah.
All right,
This is a long time.
Let's
This is
keep
a long
going.
time ago.
Oh, look at those blue eyes. You got blue eyes?
Hazel.
They look blue in this picture, buddy.
So these are some guys I did competitive shooting with. In the red is Ned Christensen, a gun builder out of Michigan. Rob Donaldson in the black shirt. Chuck Soltis in the brown. In the back is Hank Iverson from South Africa, and then me. And Hank Iverson would sponsor some of us through his training company to do some competitive shooting. It was just a phenomenal couple of years there going on the tour and shooting lots of bullets that somebody else paid for.
Okay, so real quick, just a comment. Quantum fine arts, fossil. Yes, cop dark humor is not psychopathic or psychopath. That's what they're saying. It is dark psychology and intelligence. You know that. Yeah, we've seen things that we shouldn't see. I read somewhere, guys, and I'd love to hear your commentary on this. I read the average person who's not a first responder probably sees 1 to 2 traumatic, tragic events in their life. And we see first responders, especially cops, firemen, first EMS, hundreds. Like, think of the toll. And Pete, at the end, I'm going to let you do your thing on officer wellness, first responder wellness. We'll do that. But like, think about that. The average civilian sees 1 or 2 tragic events in their life per year. We did that once a week. We do that.
So
once
I
a
mean,
week.
to bring this back to cooking and learning French and drinking wine and eating cheese boards, like that to me is like part of my wellness journey, right? Like I kind of wanted to balance things out with, like, you see some ugly stuff, and like, what is it that I could do that's like still got some beauty in life, and like learn a beautiful language, even though I suck at it. Like eat fancy cheese, like tete de moine, and like crazy, beautiful lacy cheeses, right? To try to balance this out. And yeah, I mean, it's somewhat purposeful. It's pretty therapeutic for me. So that's yeah, I mean, that's part of my wellness.
That's pretty cool. Good stuff. We'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah, I got to
SWAT.
I got to travel around a little bit and compete in tactical games, right? It's not real life. They're games. They're sporting events with guns, but it was fun, man. Again, hanging out with these guys, traveling around. This is what, look at that smile. I just got out of a federal trial. I would say 10 minutes before this picture was probably the most scared I've ever been in my whole life. I was the last charge for a civil rights violation out of 40-something charges against cops and doctors and nurses and security guards. And 10 minutes before this picture, I found out that I was found not guilty. And it's one of 5 lawsuits I've been involved in. And, I was going through pictures of the cop stuff. I saw the smile on my face. I'm like, man, I remember how relieved I was in that moment. And until you've been through it, I don't think you could explain it. I remember walking in downtown Chicago to the federal building thinking, man, I'm being held to a 200-year-old piece of paper to make sure that everybody's rights were upheld. And it was kind of special in that like I felt this connection to like our nation's history, but I was scared shitless because I was on trial. And after everybody else was released or dismissed from the case, I was the last one. So on the outside, you got Jim Deano and Laura Scary, the 2 attorneys that were provided to us, phenomenal people. And I remember hugging Laura after this thing, and she's like, it's all over. So that's the smile of a guy that just kind of got great news.
That's friggin' awesome. But it's not lost on me that the guy on your right is wearing a Blackhawks jersey, jacket. So as a hockey guy, you can appreciate it. You know, typical cop humor. I don't really give a shit about your lawsuit, but I love the fucking guy that's a Blackhawk fan.
That's Tony, my partner on that. That's my partner Tony on that day, and yeah, man, we get to share that.
I'm joking, of course, but you know, the coppers are going to rag each other, so that's what it is. So, I'm assuming Bears, Bulls, right? That's easy. Blackhawks, but where do you stand? White Sox or Cubbies?
Yeah, I'm a White Sox guy, man. That's where I went my whole childhood at Comiskey Park.
So, how good did it feel that you won the World Series before the Cubs did?
You know, I got to tell you, I was excited that the Cubs won. Right, we're a divided house. My wife and my kids are Cubs fans. I was happy for them, but just what the city felt when the Cubs won was just so much more vibrant and like so much more intense than when the Sox did it. So it was fun.
Yeah.
You got the Pope on your side. You got the Pope with you, Lou.
Oh, I thought we were winning the Super Bowl for the next 10 years. I can't believe he let us lose.
God works in mysterious ways.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we got a couple. This is great. I'm glad you shared this. The same group, 2002, 2017. So
in 2002, this is all detectives. We were working a special event. It's a yearly thing that everybody's in uniform to work it. And I realized that when we were many years later, like many of us are still around. So I asked these guys to take a picture. And so one of the guys made chief, one of the guys made deputy chief, and a couple other guys are still in detective unit with me. And I just got promoted as sergeant out of detectives. So I was going to be leaving the unit basically in the next couple of days from that bottom picture. And then that new crisper picture over on the right is some of my team members now that I work with every day.
well,
Great guys. I feel like we just get a bunch of balance in it.
Yeah. So you shared this. I'm not quite sure that I couldn't make this out, but there's some interesting stuff going on in here.
Yeah. So I've been a big student of John Boyd, the OODA guy, the observe, orient, decide, act. It could be like a conversation all in and of itself, but I started doing a lot of training, both in the police department and then part of the task forces. And basically my bosses are saying like, hey, this task force training stuff is getting pulling you away too much. It's time to kind of do this on your days off. So I did. I kind of hung the shingle, went out and started training in Illinois and beyond. And one of the things that I use here as a prop is a big slinky to talk about some of the decision making and the rates of change of your environment. And you know, there's a lot of folks out there that kind of equate me with the slinky in front of these crowds to show, you know, these different cognitive models. So it's like I love like that kinesthetic, like, you know, touching it and toying with it and like making that connection with like different visualizations. So people come up to me years and years later and remind me of like the Legos and the slinky stuff. So like just different ways of making stuff stick, you know. I mean, teaching days on an end with you know 1 or 2 PowerPoint slides. That's it.
So I'm seeing a handlebar mustache here. Am I seeing that on the left?
Oh God, I love this, and my wife hated it. But you know, we were growing beards for a charity, and take this picture with some coffee cups. It's a super long bad joke that won't translate well, but me and this guy got yelled at years before for drinking coffee on the job and ignoring something that we should have been looking at. So he's long retired. We found ourselves working at an event together. We grabbed some coffee and sent a picture out to him and says we're still at it. And
yeah. And then on the right, so this one, you and I went back and forth a couple of months ago. I think this is recent, right? The one on the right.
Yeah, this isn't too long ago. I have this like magnetism for like the news helicopters finding me on the ground and like my phone's just blowing up. It's like, here I am, I'm wearing the white, dress shirt with a tie and brown dress shoes here, like trying to get at it. And like my phone's blown up, like, that's got to be you. I know the way you walk. I know the way that you move yourself, So these guys down here, this is multi-agency policing at its finest. This is one of these things where you end up with 6 or 7 police agencies that are all converging on a problem that many before did not do. Miles and miles with no police doing anything. And then a handful of agencies down by us saying, we're not letting this go any farther. We're going to jam up traffic and take this down. Basically, a guy hijacks this ambulance with somebody in the back. Again, somebody's got to step up and do it. Everybody knows where the thing is. Paramedic in the back is calling 911, trying to report where they're at. And it's just amazing how many police agencies did not have the willingness to get involved. We need to empower that. It's like, if you're not willing to step in on this, what are you willing to step in?
Same.
Okay, so that's it, Pete. That's it, man. We'll do Pete in a minute. I'm gonna pull this down. All right, so 8:56. We're about an hour and 50 minutes in. 51 minutes in. LinkedIn. The 3 people on this call right now on this screen are the most prolific people that I know on LinkedIn. We're here. I will tell you that I use LinkedIn to make sure the law enforcement community knows that I support them and support what they do to ensure that the community stays safe. I support the cops that support the community and that the things that they do, the sacrifices they make. That's the reason why you will, even though I've worked for multiple vendors in my post-law enforcement career, you will never see, I'll share my company's stuff because I think it's an obligation I have and it's the right thing to do. Because if I didn't, I wouldn't, if I didn't believe in it, I wouldn't do it. But you'll never hear me say, hey, Lou, buy my stuff. Hey, guy, buy my stuff, buy whatever. I support my company, the companies that I've represented, because I believe and I will evangelize their products. But I want the community to know that I support them, and the cops who are doing the work, the men and women who are in the trenches dealing with the shit that we all know about. I support them. So when I talk to a vendor, when I talk to a customer representing a vendor, I am going to lead with, I know where you are. I know what you're facing. I know what your community's facing. And I think it's paid me dividends in business, trust, and more important than anything, friendships that I've had. I think COVID was the most important thing because there was this gap that we hadn't seen each other on the circuit, on the trade shows. There was this 2-year gap of nobody seeing anything. And I was wickedly vocal during COVID because I had nothing else to do and I couldn't go. And I said to my wife, how many people you think are going to say something to me about how vocal I am on LinkedIn? And she said, I don't know, 5. And I said, yeah, that's kind of what I thought. The first show after COVID, hundreds, like literally dozens and dozens. It felt like hundreds. People come up like, thanks for all the stuff that you say about cops, law enforcement, public safety, protecting the community, blah, blah, blah. Keep doing. And the active people are like, I can't say anything. I can't chime in. Unlike Lou Hayes. No, but you've never said anything inappropriate. You're just supporting the same cause, and kudos to you. And so I am grateful for my post-law enforcement career, but I'm also grateful for the LinkedIn community that has allowed me to stay connected all across the country of the most amazing men and women who are truly committed to protecting the people of the communities. I've generated business from it. I've generated friendships from it. And anyone who doesn't know what I stand for, you've missed the boat. So that's my LinkedIn experience. Let's go to Pete, and then Lou, it's your show, so you can finish it and wrap up.
I created a LinkedIn profile because I thought I was going to get fired from ATF for testifying in front of Congress. I thought I needed a job. But afterwards, it's really the only social media I use. I have Instagram, Facebook, only when I wrote the book to sell books. I never had it until then. Like you, Tommy, I think that we work in a noble profession, and I will defend cops when they get it right, or when they make mistakes that are honest mistakes. And I've called out stupidity on LinkedIn, and I think we have a duty to do that too, because otherwise it looks very one-sided. So look, I love our profession. That's my way of staying tied to it. But that's really why I created it, and it's just staying in touch and selling books, and just representing honesty. Look, I speak my mind on LinkedIn. I'm not going to bend over for anybody, and it's just I think we have a duty to be honest. That's just my take on it. Lou?
So it's the only social media that I have. I don't do anything else. And I think there's a certain I don't know if courage isn't the right word, but you got to put your name on it, right? Who you're talking to. And I appreciate that about it. If you're going to say it, right? And own it. And I get a lot of support from my police agency. It wasn't always like that. I know my chief takes letters, emails, and phone calls for complaints. Folks trying to dox me out to them and get me in trouble, and
so
it's really that's where we're at. How to find me. But I feel like there's a lot of loudmouths out there, and I just want to keep everybody kind of in check with a little bit of experience, maybe. I talk about things that I've done. I've talked about things that I'm doing now, and I'm trying to highlight some of the great work that's being done by all the folks that I'm working with in Chicagoland. I think it's different. It's a little bit maybe unorthodox when you look at things across the country. So, there's movements that are going on that I don't necessarily agree with. I try to buck some of the trends with the real-time crime center community and, developing, this is just one example, right? Where they're building these big physical, structures with ribbon cuttings and press releases and all. It's you're not going to see that out of Chicago. We're a bunch of Grabowskis, man. We're just sitting around trying to get it done with broken chairs and broken desks and technology that doesn't talk to one another. Despite that, we're working hard and our people are working hard. And I feel like I need to give some of those voices. I've been around long enough in my job where I think I can kind of hang some of my opinions on some of the experiences I've had. And now that I have some of the backing to speak out against it, then, it's where I'm going to keep on going.
Yeah. God bless, man. Important stuff.
So Quantum Fine Arts, again, Fossils, Ella French. So may she rest in peace. So thanks for mentioning her. We could sit here all day with all of the lost and fallen brothers and sisters, but you acknowledged Ella, so we're going to acknowledge right now. So we'll appreciate that. So thank you. Any final thoughts? We are 2 hours and we are 2 hours on the nose right now. So any final thoughts around the room? And then I'll just do some housekeeping and clean up, and then we'll wrap up the show.
Lou, I know I never ran into you. I know you and Tommy have crossed paths in person. I've only read your posts for many years on LinkedIn, and I do appreciate their sincerity. So it's good to actually have a conversation with you. Good to meet you. Keep doing what you're doing, brother. I hope at some point our paths cross. Hopefully the three of us together, and we can raise a beer. I'll have what you're having, Lou. I want to try that.
Old style. Yeah. So listen, I'm a Cubbies. As a New Yorker going into Chicago, if I've told, and I brought my own boys there, so it's not bullshit. The greatest sporting event outside of a championship game that you could go to, just a regular middle of the season game that you could go to is a Cubbies game on a Saturday afternoon. You will not have more fun, more excitement than going to a Chicago Cubs game on a summer Saturday afternoon. A meaningless game. You're there to watch baseball. You're there to socialize. You're there to have some beers. You go to Murphy's bleachers. You do a rooftop. You do the bleachers in the whatever. And by the way, the first foul ball I ever caught was in Wrigley. By the way. So, and then I caught it, gave it to the kid in front of me. Then I went across the street to the souvenir stand, bought an authentic baseball, scuffed it up, and brought it home and gave it to my kids and told them I caught a baseball, which is true, but I didn't tell them it wasn't the same baseball. It doesn't matter because it's not the same baseball. It doesn't matter. The matter was that it was. So VR forever. Thanks for all the comments tonight. Lou delivered tonight, so appreciate that. Funny watching Tommy do minute math. Yeah, we're trying. Listen, I'm doing the best I can at producing a podcast that is a passion project and not a professional thing because it's authentic, it's real, it's the finest unfiltered, it's truthful. We're telling it like it is, and we're bringing the people who've done the job, who've carried the weight, not the posers, not the sideline players. My wife's a Bears fan. I root loudly for the Bears. So anyway, all right, let me do our show. So I have it here. Next week, a week from today, Lieutenant Vernon Gebereth, the godfather of homicide. He wrote the book on practical homicide investigation, 5, 6, 7 editions. We'll get into that. All of the other books that he wrote. We'll walk through his entire post-law enforcement career on writing all of the books that are basically and essentially the homicide Bible, how to do investigations, especially forensics. I learned so much. I went to the homicide course in 2000. I wish I could have repeated it every year. It was very informative. And that book was a desktop reference for injuries and homicide investigations for me for a very long period of time. So Vernon Gebereth next week, a week from today, 7:05. We have the Finest Unfiltered every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. John, Eric, and Marlon, 8:05 Eastern Time. Whatever current is topical, especially NYPD, politics, New York City Council. A lot of crazy bills coming out of that show. And then tomorrow night at 5:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the Executive Perspective with Ron Layson and Rob Lukash, Zohan Mandami, the new mayor of New York City, doubles down on DCS. Episode 50, I'm going to read this. Ron and Rob delve into the recently released body-worn camera footage of a police-involved shooting in Queens. The incident involved a male who charged at officers with a knife. Mayor Mandani, using this incident to justify his Department of Community Safety, will argue that the police should not respond to individuals experiencing mental crisis. They will explore the potential dangers faced by social workers in the absence of police presence. This discussion will also cover the city's responses to Code Blue, in quote unquote Code Blue in New York City, including the resulting deaths and challenges posed by the snowstorm and the subsequent cleanup effect. I think we are up to 13 or 14 deaths of homeless in the cold, which is unbelievable and not acceptable. Another pressing issue is the impact of the recent reduction in overtime mandated by the city on the attrition rate of the NYPD is currently grappling with. So please, tomorrow, 5:05 tomorrow, join the chat, engage in the discussion with Rob and Ron on the Executive Perspective. That's it, guys. We're going to wrap up. Lou, if you want to stay in the green room, we have an outro music because We love the blues in our tavern environment, drinking old style, and then hang out and we can debrief and do a hot wash after the show. But everyone, please, God bless, stay safe. Pete, I'm going to let you finish with wellness. And
yeah, I say it every episode, man. We've seen things that your body just doesn't forget, gets filed away. And sometimes it puts you in a dark place, man. It is okay to not be okay, but it is not okay not to do something about it. So if you're in a bad spot, man, get some help. Talk to somebody, whether it be clergy, a peer, someone, a counselor. Just don't sit in the dark space, man. Find a light. Get out of there.
can we get your complete spelling, Lou, of your name for the upcoming complaint? I'm not sure. Lou Hayes is righteous. He's fine. All right. Love everybody. Stay safe, everybody. Be good. Guys, stay in the green room after we'll debrief.